Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who never expected you to fight back. You know, I used to believe that love could conquer anything, that if two people really cared about each other, they could work through any problem, overcome any obstacle. I held on to that belief for 20 years of marriage. I held on to it right up until the moment my wife Rebecca laughed in my face when I begged her to end her affair. Let me take you back to where this all started, because the signs were there, I just refused to see them. Rebecca and I had what everyone called the perfect marriage. We'd been together since college, built a beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names and borrowed cups of sugar. I worked as a project manager for a construction company, putting in long hours but always making sure I was home for dinner. Rebecca taught third grade at the local elementary school. We talked about having kids someday, but there was never any rush. We had time, or so I thought. Our neighbor Kevin moved in about 3 years ago, recently divorced, friendly enough guy in his early 40s. He worked from home doing some kind of consulting work, which meant he was around during the day while I was at the office. Rebecca mentioned him occasionally, how he'd helped Kerry in her groceries, how he'd offered to check on the house when we went out of town. Normal neighbor stuff, or at least that's what I told myself. The first real warning sign came about 8 months ago. I came home early from work one Thursday because I'd finished a project ahead of schedule. As I pulled into our driveway, I saw Kevin's car pulling out of ours. When I walked into the house, Rebecca was in the kitchen, her hair slightly messed up, cheeks flushed. She seemed startled to see me. "You're home early," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Finished the Morrison job ahead of schedule," I replied. "Was that Kevin I saw leaving?" "Oh yes, he was helping me move some furniture in the spare room. You know how my back's been acting up." I nodded, accepting the explanation. Why wouldn't I? This was my wife, the woman I'd shared everything with for 2 decades. But something felt off, like a note played slightly out of tune. Over the next few months, I started noticing things. Rebecca's phone, which used to sit openly on the counter, was now always face down or tucked away in her purse. She'd started taking long walks in the evenings, something she'd never done before. When I offered to join her, she'd say she needed the alone time to think about her students and lesson plans. She began working late at school more often, staying for curriculum meetings and parent conferences that seemed to happen with increasing frequency. When I'd call the school to see if she wanted me to pick up dinner on my way home, the secretary would sometimes say she'd left hours ago. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I'd been fighting a stomach bug all day and left work early. I just wanted to get home, take some medicine and rest. As I turned onto our street, I saw Kevin's car in our driveway again. This time something made me park a few houses down instead of pulling in. I walked around to the back of our house, to the sliding glass door that led from our bedroom to the small patio. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap where they didn't quite meet. What I saw through that gap shattered 20 years of trust in an instant. Rebecca and Kevin were in our bed, the same bed where we talked about our dreams, where she'd held me when my father died, where we'd celebrated anniversaries and lazy Sunday mornings. They weren't just having sex, they were intimate in a way that spoke of familiarity, of something that had been going on for much longer than I'd feared. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, my whole world crumbling around me. Then I quietly walked back to my car and drove to a coffee shop downtown, trying to process what I'd just seen. That night, Rebecca came home at her usual time, acting completely normal. She asked about my day, mentioned she'd stayed late to help another teacher with bulletin boards. She kissed me goodnight and fell asleep beside me as if nothing had happened. For 3 days I said nothing. I was in shock, I think. Part of me hoped I'd imagined it, that there was some explanation, but I knew what I'd seen. Finally, on Friday evening, I couldn't take it anymore. We were sitting in the living room, Rebecca grading papers while I pretended to watch TV. "Rebecca," I said, my voice barely steady. "We need to talk." She looked up, and something in my tone must have warned her. "About what?" "About you and Kevin." The color drained from her face, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she set down her red pen and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, almost annoyed. "How long have you known?" She asked, not "I can explain" or "it's not what you think." Just how long had I known? "I saw you," I said. "Tuesday afternoon in our bed." She sighed, like I was a student who'd caught her in a mistake she didn't want to deal with. "Look, Michael, these things happen. Kevin and we have a connection. It doesn't mean I don't love you." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "A connection? Rebecca, you're having an affair in our home, in our bed. How can you sit there and talk about it like it's nothing?" "Because it doesn't have to be something," she said, her voice taking on that patient tone she used with difficult parents. "People have needs, Michael, physical needs, emotional needs. Kevin understands me in ways that, well, that you don't anymore." I felt like she'd slapped me. "So this is my fault." "I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm saying it's reality. We can work through this if you're willing to be mature about it." Mature about it? Wife was asking me to be mature about her affair. Work through it how? I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. "Kevin and I care about each other, but I also care about you, about our life together. Maybe we can find an arrangement that works for everyone." An arrangement? She wanted me to agree to share her with our neighbor. "You want me to just accept this, pretend everything's normal while you continue sleeping with Kevin? It doesn't have to change anything between us," she insisted. "What you don't know won't hurt you." "But I do know," I said, my voice rising. I know, and it's killing me. That's when she laughed, not a nervous laugh or an embarrassed giggle, a genuine laugh like I'd said something absurd. Oh, Michael, she said, shaking her head. You're being so dramatic. It's just sex. It's not like I'm leaving you. I sat there, staring at this woman I'd thought I knew who was laughing at my pain like it was a joke. Something inside me broke in that moment, but not in the way you might think. It didn't break down, it broke free. You're right, I said quietly. You're not leaving me because I'm leaving you. Her laughter stopped. Don't be ridiculous. Where are you going to go? This is your home. No, I said, standing up. This was our home. Now it's just a place where you bring your boyfriend. I went to our bedroom, trying not to think about what I'd seen there, and packed a small bag. Rebecca followed me, no longer laughing but not apologetic either. You're overreacting, she said. Take a few days, cool off, and then we'll talk about this like adults. I didn't respond. I finished packing and walked toward the front door. Michael, she called after me. Don't you dare make me out to be the villain here. You're the one who's been emotionally absent. You're the one who stopped trying in this marriage. I turned back to look at her one last time. You know what, Rebecca, you're absolutely right, I did. Stop trying. I stopped trying the moment you decided our marriage vows meant nothing to you. I spent that weekend in a hotel not sleeping, just thinking. By Monday morning I had a plan. I took the day off work and drove to the city to meet with a divorce attorney. Then I visited a realtor. Our house was worth about $400,000 and we owned it free and clear. As both our names were on the deed, I had the legal right to sell it. The realtor was confident we could have it sold within a month, maybe sooner if we priced it right. I told her I was highly motivated to sell quickly. Next, I opened a new bank account and started quietly moving money. Not stealing everything I moved was legally mine, but I moved it where Rebecca couldn't access it or even know about it. I returned to the hotel and called my job. I told my boss about the situation and asked if the company's Colorado branch was still looking for a project manager. They were. I could start in 6 weeks. Over the next month I played the part of the hurt husband trying to save his marriage. I came home, slept in the guest room, and had awkward conversations with Rebecca about working things out. She seemed to believe I was coming around to her idea of an arrangement. Meanwhile, I was systematically dismantling our life together. The house sold in 3 weeks. I'd priced it to move fast, and it did. Rebecca had no idea because all the paperwork went to a P.O. box I'd rented. I sold my car and bought a truck better suited for Colorado winters. I arranged for a moving company to come on a Tuesday, a day when Rebecca would be at school and Kevin would be at his consulting job downtown. The night before the move, Rebecca made dinner and tried to talk about our future. I think we're going to be okay, she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I know this has been hard, but I think you're starting to understand that love doesn't have to be so limited. I looked at her hand covering mine and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love, just nothing. I understand perfectly, I said. The next morning I kissed her goodbye like always. She left for school at 7:30. Kevin left for his downtown meeting at 8. At 9 the movers arrived. By 4 o'clock the house was empty except for Rebecca's belongings, which we'd packed neatly in the living room. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter, along with the deed showing the house had been sold and a cashier's check for her half of the proceeds. I also left a note. Rebecca, I hope you and Kevin will be very happy together. Unfortunately, you'll need to find somewhere else to be happy. The new owners take possession on Friday. Michael, I was 3 states away when my phone started ringing. The voicemail started angry and escalated to frantic. Rebecca demanding I call her back. Kevin yelling about how I couldn't just leave them homeless. Rebecca crying about how we could work this out. I listened to each message once, then deleted it. My attorney called later that week to tell me Rebecca was contesting the divorce, claiming I'd sold the house without her consent. But I had her signature on all the necessary paperwork. She'd been signing papers for weeks thinking they were related to our reconciliation. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Rebecca fought for alimony, but my attorney argued that her adultery negated any claim she might have had. The judge agreed. I heard through mutual friends that Rebecca and Kevin dated for about 6 months after I left. Turns out their connection wasn't quite as strong when they weren't sneaking around behind someone's back. Kevin moved out of the neighborhood. Rebecca had to find an apartment across town. 6 months ago, Rebecca called me. She'd somehow got my new number. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to see if we could try again. She said she'd made a mistake, that she'd never stopped loving me. I listened to everything she had to say. When she finished, I said, Rebecca, I forgive you. I hope you find happiness, but that happiness won't be with me. She asked why I couldn't give us another chance. Because, I said, you didn't just betray me. You laughed at me when I was broken. You treated my pain like it was an inconvenience. Someone who can do that to a person they claim to love isn't someone I can trust with my heart. I live in Colorado now. I have a small house with a view of the mountains. I've started hiking, something I never did before. I've made new friends, people who don't know my story unless I choose to tell it. Do I miss being married? Sometimes. Do I miss Rebecca? I miss who I thought she was, but I don't miss who she actually turned out to be. People ask me if I regret handling things the way I did, if I regret not fighting for my marriage, not trying harder to work things out. My answer is always the same. I did fight for my marriage. I fought for it every day for 20 years. Rebecca stopped fighting for it the moment she chose Kevin over our vows. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't staying and fighting. Sometimes it's knowing when to walk away with your dignity intact. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it. And now I'm building a new life, one where laughter means joy, not mockery, and where love means commitment, not convenience. That's worth more than any house, any marriage, any connection that requires betraying someone else to maintain. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free.